Coach Neal, welcome to the Running Effect podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. It's great to join you.
There are many different aspects to your story we could dive into, and I'm sure we will in this conversation. But I think a fun place to start is I moved to Columbus in January, and you yourself have some history in this city as a coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes. Take me through those years.
Yeah, that was I really loved my time in Columbus. It was a dream job. It was kind of funny. I think a year earlier, somebody had asked me at like Thanksgiving, like, what would be your dream job? And I said, I think Ohio State is a little bit of a sleeping giant. I'd love to end up there. And 6 months later, I was moving to Columbus. I think one of the things that made it really special was the only a period of time in my kind of 21 years of coaching in college where for those 4 years, my wife worked as my assistant coach as well. And so kind of everything we did, kind of taking that program from we inherited it was not in a good space. I think they had hosted the conference meet and taken 7 of the last 9 spots at the Big Ten championship to 2 years later in the fall of 2009, taking the women's team to the National Cross Country Championships for the first time. So loved Columbus, loved my time there. It's where I met Robert Gary, which obviously ended up being a huge part of my coaching career. And so I can't say enough good things about the time we spent there.
I have to ask you, this past fall, nail biter, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Was your heart a little torn going into that game?
Oh no, I've got to go with the home team and Matt. But it was really neat to see them. That was the first time they had autoed since 2009. And so are you talking about the home football game? No, that was I was sorry. I thought you were talking about the cross country championships.
We didn't talk about that too.
There.
No.
The football game. Actually, Coach Gary, who's a Ohio State alum, came up for the game with his son Percy. And they're huge Ohio State people. I have. Since I've left, I've continued cheering for Ohio State, but that was I was Notre Dame all the way, and that was an absolute heartbreaking loss with a second to go on the clock, and with 2 minutes to go, we thought we had it. So that one really did hurt for a minute, but I was glad because I think if they would have lost, Percy, Coach Gary's son, might have started a riot in the parking lot. So it probably worked out for the best that they ended up winning.
So Ohio State, Furman, now Notre Dame. I know a few programs before that. What are some of the biggest commonalities you've experienced in successful programs, different programs, but all the same successful?
I think, one of the common lines I've seen in successful programs is the athletes on the team and kind of how they approach the day in and day out. I think that's the one thing that doesn't change, especially in this sport where consistency is everything. And what can you do for a long period of time, not just what can you do for one day. And so anytime I've had a team that's gone on to achieve or maybe even overachieve for what we thought we were going to do for that year, I think that consistency of how they showed up day in and day out was a big part of that success. I think it's a must for any successful program. You as a coach have to know when you're walking into the locker room kind of what you're getting every day. If every day is a little bit of a surprise, that's probably not a good thing.
How much of setting the tone and the culture do you think comes from the coach's attitude themselves? I've heard that, the athletes will replicate how the coach is talking, their body language, all of that. How important do you think it is that when the coach walks in the locker room, they're carrying the right mindset with them?
I think it's really important, to be honest. I think not only carrying the right mindset, are you the same person when you show up every day? One of the things I really try to be for my athletes is extremely consistent. We all have things going in our life. We all have ups and downs, but it's kind of my job that when I show up there at 3:30 every day, they know who they're getting. They know the attitude I'm going to be walking in, and that I'm excited and ready for practice, and that I'm expecting the same. Now, I expect that I'll probably be a little bit more stable with it at 42 than they are at 18. But it does kind of start with me and trickles itself on down. I also think it helps with expectations as far as setting expectations day one of practice of what you expect from your team, from practices, and then even resetting it every once in a while. One thing I really like is going into breaks or going into a new season is having another meeting where you sit back down and really walk through like, hey, this is what we're looking to get out of the next 2 months of training. This is, what we can improve on right now. Let's go back through some of the warm-up drills. I mean, just hitting reset every once in a while, I think is always a good thing. And you always see a nice little jump in attitude, performance, everything when you hit that reset. I think every no matter how good of an athlete you are, everybody needs a reminder of what they did to get them into this position.
What does your communication look like with your athletes? Is it generally through team meetings? Is it before and after practice? Is it one on one with the athletes? What does that process look like for you communicating with the athletes and talking about mindset and goals and direction of program?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a kind of a little bit of a group meeting every single day. We've got a really nice locker room set up, and that's where we meet for practice every day. And I kind of start practice with just a here's what today is, here's what's coming up this week, and just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page at all times. I really do like a lot of one-on-one meetings. Come by my office, let's sit down, let's really talk through training. I think coaching works the best when it's a back and forth effort where yeah, I always take the first draft as the coach as far as what I think we should be doing. But then I do like to hear back and forth. People talk a lot about individualized training, and I think that's a huge part of it. But obviously, you still have people, still want everybody working out together on Tuesday. The individualized part a lot of times comes with some of the ancillary stuff, the mileage, how they're breaking up their runs, and that comes through this sitting down, going back and forth, a little bit of trial and error, but also I think people do a better job. They're crisper with their training when they feel like they've got a little bit of a seat at the table, or they had some back and forth. And when they leave this office, they're like, man, that's my plan. I'm really excited about this next cycle we're doing. And so I do think the communication's a huge part of it. We also, for announcements and stuff, we use GroupMe all the time. It's normally followed by somebody making a joke anytime I make an announcement, but it is still a very effective way to kind of keep everybody on the same page. And so there's so many different forms of it nowadays with texting and calling. But I think a lot of those lead interpretation for people misreading things. I think nothing still beats coaching one-on-one, sitting down in an office, walking a lap on the track one-on-one with an athlete, and really making sure that everybody's on the same page.
As we've mentioned a little bit in this conversation, you've spent time at different successful programs throughout the years. Talking about Notre Dame currently, as you sit with me here today, March 2024, what are some of the things that excite you the most about the men's program at the moment?
I think one of the things that really excites me is how many guys we have returning next year and how young our talent is. We've got some good guys. I thought indoor season went pretty well for us, especially the ACC and me in particular. And none of those guys that scored are graduating at the end of the year. So really excited about that. Obviously, it's hard not to be excited about the young talent we have on the team. Not only the two freshmen we kind of redshirted this fall, but the seven guys we got walking in the door next year. I just think the program, Notre Dame athletic department as a whole, but our program in particular, is in a really good, stable position to build and get better every year.
This might be easy for you to say because you're obviously Notre Dame biased as you should be, but I've said it as someone who talks to many of the top coaches and athletes. I was saying this at Foot Locker. I was like, Notre Dame has to have the best recruiting class this year. I mean, when you look at Drew Griffith, Cam Todd, Colin Whitaker, the class this year is just out of this world. How excited are you for the upcoming class? And also just such a fun group of kids. Like, as I'm sure you know in your process with Cameron Todd, funniest guy on the block. Amazing kid.
No, Cam Todd is phenomenal, especially personality wise. Now, I did have to do a good job when I was recruiting him. Of any time I had a phone call to Cam Todd, that my calendar was very clear because I knew I wasn't getting off that thing in less than 40 minutes. But no, I couldn't be more excited about this class. It's a great group, but I think it's the right group too. They really, everybody brings something different to the table, but they all fit in very well for what we were looking for at Notre Dame. It's easy to go. I don't want to say it's easy. You can go collect fast times, but you getting the right people to mix in a locker room together. I think one of the things I'm really happy with this class that we've been able to put together through the help of my assistant, Jared Schatz, but also the men on the team. I mean, if you want to know why we have a good recruiting class, it's because the guys in this locker room did such a good job when these guys were on official visits and really showed excitement about what the program is and where it's going and the time they've had here. Nothing beats a coach can make a million phone calls. All that matters is what happens when those kids are on official visits with the team and what kind of impression do they make. And so really proud of our guys for getting this group put together for sure. But no, I mean, Drew obviously is the easy one to talk about because he's just smashing things. But Ryan, the one who had a sneaky great weekend last weekend was Noah Nielsen, 3 races in 3 days, I think 3 PRs. And on his third race was third with a big PR in the 800 at New Balance. So across the board, just really excited for the future of the program.
Of course, a program like Notre Dame, you're going to have kids with the fastest times. They're going to be on your doorstep, as with other top schools in the country. Speaking to an element you were just talking about there of like that kind of X factor of like who are they as people and how do they interact with the other guys on the team and what's the culture going to be like. Without giving away your secrets here, what are some of the things you're looking for in an athlete? You know, anyone who's talking to Notre Dame has the times checked down. What are some of the other X factor things you're looking for in an athlete in terms of them as people?
I think they have to want a challenge. I think if I'm talking to kids and they're scared of the fact that they're going to be pushed both academically and athletically, they're probably not a good fit. I always think that when you're working hard in the classroom, it almost pushes you to work hard. Like one kind of feeds the other. And so I like the kids that want that kind of challenge. I like the kids that talk a lot about team and are excited if they're on a good team, they want to stay on a good team, or man, I'm just looking forward to having teammates because I've always had to do this by myself. And then watching them interact with the other recruits when they're on the visit. Is it like they're all already teammates, or you know, are they kind of a me guy? This isn't a great place for a me guy, to be honest. I'm sure there's programs for them. This just is not one of them. We obviously want to see guys be hugely successful as an individual, national champions and All-Americans, and continue on, what Nagoose and others have done in their time here at Notre Dame. But we also want the men's cross country and the women's cross country programs to be in the top 10 and be fighting for trophies every year and really making an impact. And so I think you're right. The kids we're going to talk to are fast kids. We then have to find the right ones. And you have to be, I think sometimes as a recruiter, you have to be willing to walk away. Like, man, that kid's fast. I know they'd get us some points in the ACC meet, but they also might kill the locker room. And so you just got to find the right kids. And I think it's a lot of times if me and my assistant are sitting down talking and we're both a little not sure, then that person's just not the person for us. And we kind of move on.
Speaking on your current program and the opposite side, I feel like Olivia has just lit the world on fire, and I've had the privilege of getting to know her a little bit through the podcast. Such an awesome individual, and the women's program in general has been crushing it recently. How much do you think that's set the bar for the guys' team of like Olivia, every time she hits the track, she's running something crazy? Like, how inspiring is it to have figures like that in the program?
I think it's great to have. I think successful people breed other successful people. And you talk about consistency. There's nobody more consistent than Olivia. I mean, as far as even just how she shows up every day, never really seems to have a bad day in running. I'm sure that's not true, but she's doing workouts that I'm sitting there scratching my head going, man, I would have never put that on paper. And I can't believe she just smashed that. And so Coach Sparks has done such a good job developing her. She comes from such a great family. Her dad was our school record holder in the 10K here back in the day. And, this fall couldn't have gone better with both her and her sister being All-Americans on that day. And so I think we've got a true combined program, obviously different coaches. Coach Sparks and Emily coach the women, and me and Jared with the men. I think that's great for both those genders because our time's not getting spread too thin, but we travel at the same time, we practice at the same time. Like, I do want both teams together because I think the success of one really bleeds over to the success of the other at all times. And nothing's better than when you're rolling to the national meet 14 deep and ready to do something exciting on both sides.
What's the relationship look like with Coach Sparks, and what is the conversation looking like in terms of collaborating, talking about your individual programs, talking about how individuals are looking? What does that process look like of trying to make both programs as good as they can be?
Yeah, we talk a lot. I mean, our offices are right next to each other, and so we probably spend more time talking during the day than we should, but about the programs. But no, it is a great collaborative effort. I always print off my training, give it to him so he knows what the men are doing over the next 8 weeks and keeping him in the loop. He is a great director when it comes to he hires people to do a job, and then all he does is just give you all the support you would need. If you're asking for advice, he gives it to you, and if not, he's just there saying, "Let's go get it." I mean, he really does a phenomenal job running this program. He's a big reason why I was, willing to leave Furman and come here to take over this position. It was working for Coach Sparks. He's been such a successful coach, but I think it takes a special head coach to be willing to like step back and truly take their reins off and say, that's yours, go do it. The success is yours, the failure is yours, the whole nine, but that you're that guy, and that's him for sure. And so it makes it a lot easier for me to show up and get my work done. And all he is nothing but an asset for the entire program, but the men's distance program in particular. I mean, he was a very successful men's distance coach in his own right, and so he could have easily done it. But I think he knows it's better for every athlete if you have one coach in charge of 20 as opposed to one coach in charge of 40.
Who have been some of the biggest influences on you as a coach coming up in the sport?
Yeah, I've been lucky to really get to be on staffs with some great coaches, from Sue Parks to Todd Lane and Brian Fetzer. But it would be hard to say that anybody's been a bigger influence on my coaching or what I'm currently doing, how I approach things than Robert Gary. I mean, I spent 15 years with Robert when you go back and include our time at Notre Dame working side by side to then our time working together at Furman. And over that time, Robert became straight family to my family. And I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think he's a great director of a program. And so a lot of what I do, how I approach things, how anally organized I am with certain things, all does relate back to Robert Gary. I definitely don't think I'd be here if it was, coaching in this position if it wasn't for working with him. And so he'd definitely been the biggest influence for how I look at training to how I look at team travel, to be honest. And so, yeah, he's been a huge part of it.
We mentioned the type of athlete that's going to be recruited by Notre Dame, that's going to join the team. I'm curious to hear about, how do you handle and manage the expectations that these athletes have when they come onto your team? Anyone who's coming onto Notre Dame is a nationally class ranked athlete, a lot of times a national champion. How do you take that and let them know that, hey, you might not win an ACC title this year, but here's the path to which you're going to get there?
It's hard. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's hard to teach these athletes patience, and they were the best in high school. But I mean, everybody has seen the jump that's not only been made at the high school level, but the incredible jump that's been made at the college level, where it used to be 13:30 meant you're the national champion. Now we have guys running 13:30s who literally walk out of the NCAA or the ACC meet, our conference meet, without getting a single point. And so it's just evolved so much. The one thing I love about these kids is they all think they can do it. Like, I mean, you talk to them, they're like, well, I know I can run 13:30. And it's like, wow, really? Okay. Cause that's pretty fast. But it is teaching them the steps along the way. Hey, you gotta walk before you can run. You gotta run before you can sprint. And so trying to line them up with the goals that are exciting, but also achievable. We talk a lot about, like, hey, you've got to get the ACC standard before you can get to the ACC meeting. You got to make that final and score there before you can get to the NCAA finals and score there. Start checking these boxes off, and the quicker, hey, if you can score at the ACC as a freshman, that means you're a year ahead of then being at the national meet and scoring at the national meet. I think one thing that really, really helps is some of the guys like Carter Solomon, or some of the older guys in the program who maybe, were stud guys coming out of high school, struggled a little bit their first couple of years, and then all of a sudden got that, breakthrough and scored back at the national meet. They're able to really talk these guys through, like, hey, do this, and maybe you can skip some of this growing pains that I went through, but also you've got to stay patient on it. And so they do a good job for the most part of, like, seeing the successes and still being excited as they PR and stuff. But I will say it is a quick pivot from, hey, I just broke 14 for the first time. How quickly can I get to 13:30? Because they just know that's what it takes now to be successful. So it's not even as much about being, like, delusional or anything. I think they all just want to really contribute to the program. They want to be All-Americans, and they see what it takes. And the one thing I do love about this new breed of runners in the NCAA is when they see one person do it, they don't sit there and go, like, man, that's never going to happen again. Like, tell you what, 10 years ago, if I would have watched Nico run 12:57, I would have been like, all right, well, that's the collegiate record forever. Now I'm sitting there like, man, I wonder if that thing will last 6 months. I mean, it's the way the NCAA is now. And, people talk about what has caused this big jump, and we could get in that for an hour for sure. But part of it is they see it, and then they just automatically believe they can do it. And they start working towards it immediately. And I think that's it's a great trait to have for sure.
Of course, you coach athletes, but I'm curious to dive into coaching the people aspect, specifically at an institution like Notre Dame. You mentioned a few times just how academically prestigious it is. How much of your job do you feel like is walking with the athlete, not just through practice, but also through any other struggles that come up that obviously will affect their performances and how they show up to practice?
Yeah, I think it's a huge part of it. I think you can't look at an athlete in a bubble. We coach these 18 to 22-year-old athletes that have a lot of things pulling at them in different directions. It's academics, it's girlfriends, it's parents back home, it's the family dog passed away. I mean, it's literally all these things. And so if you just coach them in a bubble and you don't look at them as all around person, you're missing a huge chunk of what's actually going on with them. And so try to really maintain the open door policy where you don't have to have an appointment scheduled or anything. Just if you're having a rough day, cruise on through, shoot me a text, walk on up. I'm in here, kind of living here. So I think the guys do a good job taking advantage of that. One of the things I love about this job in particular, coaching college athletes, is they change so much from the time they walk in here at 18 to when they walk out of here at 22, 23. It is watching them go from young adults, especially on the guy side. They walk in, they're a ton of fun, but they're bouncing off the walls. They're so excited and hyper and kind of exuberant about everything, to watching them mature over the 5 years to being ready to leave Notre Dame with one of the best degrees in the country and go on and like be ready for the real world, and helping them throughout that period. I look out where I work with a lot of kids who come from great families and their parents have really set them up to be successful when they get here, but they still are going to, you're not going to just skate through college without hitting bumps in the road. And that's what we're here to support them with. And you got to take it into training from volume and everything else. When we're looking at like double threshold workouts or something, does their schedule actually line up for it? It is, recovery is a big deal. So if we do it on Tuesdays, but somebody's in class from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m., it's probably not going to work for them that semester. And so playing with it, and taking all those kind of things into consideration, I think is a part of putting this puzzle together, to make sure everybody has the best experience possible.
Coach Neal, where did you personally first start and experience a love and passion for the sport of running?
Um, to be honest, I started running a little bit in middle school. I was really bad, getting my butt kicked all the time. But high school, I really fell in love with the sport and probably fell in love with the group of guys I ran with more than anything. Like it was just we had a huge freshman class come in my freshman year together. The team had been pretty bad probably up until that point, but then we started winning conference and sectional titles and qualifying, for different rounds of the state meet here in Indiana. Best state since there's only one champion, by the way. But just throw that out there. But no, it's and so we really, I think that team camaraderie of it really made me fall in love with the sport, which really then made me start throwing myself in and nerding out into it. And so as that moved into college, but then I kind of almost fell in love with it when I started coaching. As a college athlete, I probably could have definitely, well, not probably, could have definitely been a lot better at understanding my training and what was going on. And I was a little old school, grew up wrestling and running. And so you just did what coach told you. You never ask a question, and that's just what you do. And that's kind of how I approached it. But once I started really delving into training and looking at that, I kind of fell in love with it all over again, and the nuances of it and different ways of doing it. Having 10 athletes in front of me, seeing them all get PRs, but we got there in different ways. I think that really is what I love about this sport in particular.
How do you feel like your experiences as an athlete have now influenced your experience as a coach?
I think my experiences as an athlete probably more helped me when kids are struggling than any other time. I was a college athlete who probably spent more time having knee surgeries than competing towards the end. Especially at post my freshman year. And so when kids are struggling, I definitely understand what that's like. I've been there. Can definitely you know talk them through when they're having struggles, because been there myself, and sometimes that's easier than for somebody who was the Olympic runner who just won a million national titles and didn't struggle at all through college. So I do think that point helps it. But then I got to say the majority of what I do now as it doesn't have near as much to do with what I did it personally as an athlete back when I was running in high school and college, as more as just what I've learned over the last 21 years of doing this at the college level, talking with other coaches who are really successful, working with people that I respect. And that's not just distance coaches. I was really lucky early on in my coaching career when I was at Ball State, to be on the staff 1 year with Brian Fetzer, who went on to obviously be the coach at Harvard and Cal, and then be the head coach at Virginia. But then also got to spend a whole year working with Todd Lane, who I think is the best jumps coach in the entire country. And so being able to soak up information from those guys too, even as a distance coach, I feel like really played a big role into how I looked at training, warming up, importance of form drills. I mean, all that kind of stuff in my career.
You started your coaching career at Model Laboratory School. When I hear of someone who's running the Notre Dame men's distance program, I don't think they would start at a school. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's located. I would love to have you reflect on how full circle it is, the programs you've gotten to work with, how far you've come in the sport, as well as what would be some advice you would say to someone listening who's passionate about coaching. Maybe they have a job as a graduate assistant or a middle school, and they want a job like you have right now, but they're not quite sure the path and they're starting to doubt themselves. What would you say?
Well, I'll tell you that, trust me, I didn't know the path either. And this isn't where, if you would have told me, when I was a senior in college that I was going to be sitting here, there's no way I would have put money on it. Like I mentioned, I had several knee surgeries. And so by my senior year, wasn't really able to compete at the college level, just kind of missed too much time. And I just had a chance meeting. And I can't tell you how many stories start off that way, where I was doing some observations as an education major. I was in Model Laboratory School, which is owned by Eastern Kentucky and on their campus. And I want to say from kindergarten to 12th grade is like 225 kids. So smallest school you can imagine. And he's like, hey, we don't have a cross country and track program. This is the gym teacher. And I'm thinking about starting one. He goes, I don't really know much about running. Would you like to coach them? And I can kind of manage it. Jason Monser was his name. He was an awesome guy. And I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I was kind of jonesing to have something like that again. Not really being as involved with the team as I was before. And so we started that and did that. And I thought that was going to be my path. I was getting ready to graduate from Eastern Kentucky. I was going to teach and coach high school, and that was going to be it. The state meet literally maybe 6 weeks before I was about to just move on with life, bumped into Brian Fetzer, who happened to be at the Kentucky State meet recruiting for Ball State University. And if you know Brian, he will talk to anybody, talk your ear off for an hour. He's great at it. But he was like, hey, if you really like coaching, why don't you just enroll in grad school at Ball State and come volunteer for me and Sue up in Muncie? Thought about it for literally like a day. And I was kind of like, I'm probably not the best teacher, because all I'm really looking forward to is getting to practice after school. So probably if I can get to do where all I'm doing is the coaching, it's probably a better way to go. And so I literally applied to grad school, packed up, went to Ball State. And when I say I spent the whole day at the track, I took only night classes to get my master's degree so that I could be at sprints practice in the weight room starting at 5 a.m. to every distance practice, all the sprints and jumps practice. Just wanted to soak up as much as I could. It was like a boot camp for track and field for the next, 18 months as I got my master's and did that. And I went from being a volunteer there to a GA spot opened up, and I did that. And then what's funny, and I think sometimes young coaches get frustrated with getting jobs. My first full-time job leaving Ball State that summer, I had kind of, I'd spent so much time doing the sprints and jumps and the distance. I had kind of said, whatever I get my first job in, that's the path I'll go. That's the event area I'll coach. Because I really kind of loved both, to be honest with you. And that summer I applied for 87 jobs and got one at the University of New Orleans. And I took that job in Tulane. And 5 years later, I'm at Ohio State. And so it definitely escalated quickly for me, met some of the right people along the way. But it all happened out of just a happened meeting with Brian Fetzer, and then him also being open enough to invite me to come up there and get into coaching and involve me in everything he was doing. Him and Sue both. I think they're a little surprised when I just showed up at their doorstep, for sure. That, oh my God, this guy actually just moved up here to do this. But man, it really paid off for me in the long haul. And Sue and Brian are still two people that I talk to, every single month. I mean, they've been huge parts of my coaching journey. And so I guess advice for young people is you can't always see how A leads to B. You gotta take the path that's given to you. I kind of always tell my assistant, like, some of the things I thought I missed out on, different jobs or something maybe along the way. I often look back and go, thank God I didn't get that job, because if I took that job, there's no way I get this next one that then leads me to exactly where I want to be. I mean, me and my wife are both from Indiana. Our parents live within 2 hours of here. Notre Dame University. I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's an Ivy League education with Power Five attached to it. It just can't be beat. And so really grateful for everybody who's had a hand in it along the way, and what got me here.
Coach Neal, how would you personally define the word coach?
Oh, probably mentor more than anything. I really do think, especially at this level, I think it's not just about the X's and O's. The X's and O's is the fun part of what I do. I mean, it really is. That the 3:30 to 5:30, that is the most enjoyable part of my day. Being at practice, being with the guys, interacting with them. That I don't want to say it's the easy part, but it is kind of. It's because that's what I would do for free any day of the week. The rest of it is the really helping these guys navigate the waters, from the time they commit here, and then helping them through the application process and their senior year and the ups and downs of that, and getting here to South Bend, to then helping them grow in their time here. I mean, I think the coach really is a mentor the whole way through. It is your job to make sure these guys. You're just like a member of the staff here at the university that's helping them, educate them. You also need to have them ready to leave campus, ready to be adults and attack the world.
Something I've enjoyed asking many of the coaches, if not every single coach I've had on here, just because the answers vary, and it's something so many people who listen to this podcast are curious about. The question I ask is, what does it take to be great at the sport of running? What would you say to that?
I think focus is a big one. I mean, I just don't think, especially at this level anymore. I was sitting talking with a group of coaches, some post collegiate, some college coaches at after the Boston meet, the Valentine meet. They said, "Man, running in college is like running professionally nowadays. I mean, the times are just so fast, and the kind of commitment it takes to run those fast times, and so I think you've got to have that kind of focus where, throughout the day, you're constantly kind of thinking about your goals, what you're trying to achieve. It keeps you focused on doing all the small things. Anybody can show up to practice from 3:30 to 5:30 and go run 10 miles, do the drills coach stands. Doing all that stuff when somebody's standing there is that's easy. That's the easy part. And what kind of athlete are you when nobody's watching? Are you doing your core? Are you going to sleep? Are you taking care of the business you're supposed to take care of? Are you not letting studies pile up so that you're not so stressed out? I mean, all those little things, I think. So your focus, your day-to-day focus on what are the tasks at hand. I think that's a huge part of people who end up being successful, not only in running, in the classroom, and once they graduate. I mean, some of my best runners are the ones who are meticulous about it. Now, there's always outliers, where I wonder how they show up to practice every day and they're still good athletes, but they're the ones I'm really trying to mentor. And they do change a lot in the time I have them. So I'm not saying everybody's like that, but man, it really helps. And you can jump some real steps quicker when it's such a priority for them and they're really focused on it.
I know you're crushing it in your current role, and I don't want to think about retirement anytime soon because you got many more years in the sport. But reflecting on your career as a whole and getting to know you better, when you hang up the clipboard and stopwatch one day, what do you want people to think of when they hear the name Coach Chris Neal?
You know, I hope that it's more just the people who are thinking about me or the athletes I've coached, to be honest. I would almost say somewhat to this point in my career, I've been a little bit behind the scenes as far as I've been coaching teams and stuff, but kind of quietly, but the athletes I've worked with know who I am and know know the work I put in. And as long as there's a long contingent of them who are happy that they made the decision to come run for me and develop, and that's all I could ask for, to be honest. That's what makes it worth the time and the effort. That's the weekends and everything. I think is the fact that those kids, when they're done, they look back and they go, "Man, that was absolutely the right decision for me. I'm glad I made the decision to go to Notre Dame and run for Coach Neal and Coach Schatz." And man, that was a home run.
Coach Neal, wrapping up our conversation today, asking you the final question I ask every single guest on every single podcast. If you had Gordon Ramsay coming over to your house for dinner, what would you personally choose to make for him?
Okay, so I actually really do like to cook. So this is probably my go-to would be I really like making chicken curry because I like all the prep and everything that goes into it. So I'd probably make him chicken curry. But yeah, I am somebody I like to cook. Rita Gary, part of the reason I like it so much when we had our second child, she got me like a month's supply of Home Chef, and so that got me and my oldest son into doing that together. And but I love it, and so I think it's a great way to actually wind down the day is going home and doing some work in the kitchen. So it's a lot of fun.
One final more question, special one for you. And it came up as you were sharing your response there. We're recording this on a Friday. This will be out long past St. Patrick's Day, but St. Patrick's Day is in 2 days. Big for the University of Notre Dame. Do you cook any classic Irish dishes? I don't think my family's Irish, but my mom growing up every year would make, I think, corned beef and cabbage, which was delicious. Do you have any specialties in the Irish department?
So I don't. My wife just a couple weeks ago though, I had come across a really good shepherd pie recipe, and she whipped that up for us, and it was absolutely fantastic. Great Irish spot across the street that we go before hockey games and stuff with fish and chips and things like that. So really do love it, love everything about it. Getting to go up to actually we're on spring break this week, and so tomorrow I'm actually going to go up and see Chicago Green River for the first time for St. Patty's Day. So very excited about that.
Coach Neal, really appreciate all you're doing to give back to the sport, all you're doing for your athletes. The ones I've talked to have nothing but incredibly positive things to say about you. And I can see why after talking with you and spending 40 minutes with you. So thank you for taking the time to have this conversation and keep crushing it.
Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for everything you're doing to give our sport some more coverage. The kids love it. So thanks. Keep up the great work.